started with Arjuna in the first chapter crying out in the wilderness of the soul, trying to make heads or tails of what it is that's actually taking place with him and around him, in him, that's not part of the ordinary flow of existence. Then you have chapter 2, where we have Krishna saying that there's nothing possible until you have made the real connection to something that is of a higher nature, and that it's from that connection inside to one's deepest part, one's innermost, often referred to as the soul, that one makes this correspondence, this connection, and is therefore able to have the power generated to actually want to do something. And chapter 3, the actual teaching of karma yoga, which is in life to practice as a living being here on earth, to bring the teachings in to one's daily existence. Now, starting chapter 4, the Yoga of Partial Wisdom, the explanation that Krishna starts with is that where his teachings have been taught, and he goes historic, but the basic idea is that there's one teaching. There has always been one teaching. There isn't, there's multiple understandings that have arisen from the various schools, sects, religions, traditions that apply to the specific group of people at a specific time, but that's a relative truth, that there is only one absolute truth, and that absolute truth wasn't just being given here in the Gita to followers of a particular sect of Hinduism. It's a universal truth that is timeless, and it is the root of all the truths and all of the teachings. And he starts by giving this exposition of that. The idea is very important to grasp, that what we have is partial representations at this level of our development, that we don't have the full teaching, and we're not able to understand the full teaching because it's our limited development that we're facing. We have to understand that the partial comes from us, not from the teaching itself. Krishna is trying to explain, and will continue to explain, the fullness of the teachings for everyone. But our basic problem is that we ourselves aren't capable of understanding. We don't have the highest level of development to understand. There isn't going to be some way that he can explain it completely to us until we ourselves are actually developed to the level where we can understand it. So the partial explanation is going to be really setting out an understanding between a relative and an absolute truth with a capital T. Now, to clarify it, he's in verses 12 and 13. He's going to try to explain how it's not possible to understand these truths intellectually, and that he's trying to describe the process which I would call alignment, that it's only, it's not some kind of knowledge that theoretically one can grasp. One has to be in alignment with what's higher to understand it. So it would be, I'm thinking of an analogy, trying to think of an analogy. I would say if you were to want to know what it's like from the top of a mountain to look at the view, there wouldn't be a possibility of the description of what it looks like. It would be just words, but once at the top, one could have a view. And so the process of alignment is when one is living my daily life, I have a focus which is ordinary, and the description that's given is more of a downward looking at a life that has tasks and to be accomplished, which one must do. But the turning one makes towards looking towards what's higher reorientates one's life. And when I have a certain amount of turning towards something that's higher and making a connection and having this pulled away from looking down but looking up, I have a sense of aim and purpose for my existence. And that's a true aim and purpose with a capital A and P. It's a real direction, a real orientation. And when I have that, then I'm in alignment with what's higher. And in the Christian tradition, they say, not my will, but thine. That's an expression of alignment. So I am not living for my own self-centered, selfish, I, me, mine aims, but for a higher purpose, my true purpose. And of course, as I said previously, it's the aim and purpose of life to be part of what is a higher that gives one the satisfaction of existence, that one is actually in the flow of what life really is. Not having that, we settle for aims and purposes of ordinary existence, which are satisfying to a degree, particularly ones that are not so self-centered. But inevitably, without having the higher level of energy and connecting with what's higher, there isn't anything that's going to ultimately be satisfactory, because the satisfaction, even in ordinary activities, flows from what it is that's higher that enlivens the activity. And so the point that he's making at this point is that one needs to have an alignment, a clarity of aim, working for something beyond myself. Now in verse 13, he goes on to say that the only way to tread the path in reality is by the knowledge of Krishna, of the Atman that is present as the unseen background of every action, of the smallest as of the greatest, of the action that sends the pen across the page, as of the action that hurls 1,000,000 men into battle. Just as nothing can move except within the framework of space, so nothing can take place except within the light of Atman, which yet is no more entangled in the actions than space is entangled in the movements of objects, and therefore Krishna says that those who know him are freed from the bonds of action. So, firstly, know, in the sense of Gnostic knower, the knowing, again, is not intellectual. That's going to be throughout the book. To know means to know. It's not a knowledge, no. It's a knowing. It's a higher level. And it needs to be understood that it's of complete importance to see the manifestations of what's higher in every activity, in all aspects of one's life, from the most simple to the most complex, that those moments of which we value as the most intense or highest or best in our own interpretation are but a recognition of that what's higher manifesting through the action. Our great loves and our revelations and our true happiness stems from this one root, and he's trying to explain that in using words, earthly words, in terms that we might grasp, at least to some degree, what it is that is the force that underlies everything.